Hello and welcome to Maxim Foods Inside Track. Here we are in August already. I hope everyone's had a great fortnight. Lots happening here in Australia. The Australian Matildas, our women's World Cup soccer team, have progressed to the round of 16. They gave us a bit of a heart starter against Nigeria last week, but came back very strongly against Canada, winning 4-0. So yeah, next week our round of 16 match is on Monday. So all the best to the girls. Probably the biggest news from last night's auction was whole milk powder going down 8%, down to its lowest since September 2020. So yeah, we did anticipate that that demand would have been a little sluggish, but probably not to that level. With New Zealand season coming on, it does seem that there are bearish signs in the market for whole milk powder. With supply being quite plentiful. A positive notion from last night was that North Asia were in participation and probably the highest they have been for the last couple of auctions. So it really is that question mark over the biggest market, North Asia, as to when they will come back in and their demand over the next 2 to 3 months to level out the increase in supply from the start of the New Zealand season. Having a look at skim milk powder, if you look across the globe, in the EU we did see a bit of an uptick in demand, some bigger international buyers swallowing up some product there, so a little bit more positive news and more stable conditions in the EU. In the US, non-fat's been quite tumultuous, and the CME, we have seen a bit of an uptick in pricing there as well. In New Zealand we saw a slight decline in the GDT last night, but relatively balanced for skim milk powder on a global level. Moving across to butterfat, if we look across the globe, we have seen bearish conditions in butter pricing, or the butter market in the EU. That has stabilised a little bit as demand has picked up. In the US, things are quite stable, some good domestic and Mexican demand for US product has kept pricing reasonably stable. If you look over to Australia and New Zealand, down 0.7% last night on the GDT, which could be seen as a positive result. There was a lot more volume put on the GDT, which has been swallowed up, and pricing has remained on par. So you could argue that demand for butterfat remains relatively good, and it is probably the best performing of the commodities at the moment. Having a look at cheese now, in the EU we've seen a long period of low demand and sufficient supply that has seen some real bearish conditions in cheese in the EU. We've finally seen a bit of a relief there as demand has picked up, with EU tapering off towards the end of their season, milk contracting. The dynamics seem to be changing into a more stable, maybe bearish outlook for cheese in the EU. In the US, yeah, quite tumultuous, like the non-fat market. Yeah, the CME for cheese had quite a significant uptick on the last fortnight, which has thrown it into a bit of volatility. Seems to have settled since then, but yeah, some positive outlook for cheese, and more positive than we have seen in the last 2 to 3 months. Milk retraction in the US has caused probably that volatility and uptick in demand, but it'll be interesting to see how the next 3 months go in the US market. In Australia and New Zealand, we have seen a bit of retraction in demand due to inflationary pressure. The RBA last night or yesterday announcing that they'll put interest rates on hold, may give consumers a bit more confidence in that retail and food service sector. So we hopefully see a bit more positive signs in demand, because supply has been reasonably good from New Zealand and Australian cheese. So yeah, reasonably bearish to stable outlook for Aussie and NZ cheese. Finishing off with whey powder. Sweet whey powder, still a bearish outlook. Production on the back of cheese in the EU and the US has meant that the production and supply of whey powder is still quite abundant. So it would really need a good uptick in demand to send pricing north. In the protein side of things, EU demand for protein has really lifted WPC pricing from a reasonably low base, so we're seeing good positive signs on protein demand. Indian protein demand has been quite high as well, so although there has been surplus product around on proteins, we are starting to see positive signs and a more stable to bullish outlook. Thanks very much for listening to today's Inside Track. Have a great fortnight, and we'll see you again soon.